Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, welcome back to Stormgate Central. So in today's video, we've got a small update from the Frost Giant team on when you can expect the next beta test for the game, and if you're a Kickstarter backer and you purchase the Deluxe Founders Edition or better, that means your time has finally come to go hands-on with the game. Also, Frost Giant have detailed the design process behind one of the iconic units in the game, the Hedgehog, showing it going from the placeholder model that you probably saw in the last beta to the full art version that'll be visible in the next beta.
Yeah, so a quick note here. If you watch the match with Moon versus Mana, I'm sorry, Moon versus, no, not Moon, TLO versus Mana, excuse me, TLO was doing a Hedgehog build. And that did seem to be, at least in the meta and in the build, the iteration that the game was in, that was a core unit. It reminded me a little bit of like a StarCraft 1 Vulture, but viable not just against weak units, but also against strong units.
So all of that is coming up, but before we begin, if you guys
I hear the Sonic the Hedgehog alert. I forgot to turn my alerts off here. It's like nobody do another.
Enjoy the content here on the channel. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. We will, of course,
give them a
be
sub,
covering
guys.
all of the Stormgate news here on the channel, and then post-release casts, guides, builds, and all of that good stuff. Thank you guys so much for your support thus far. You are absolutely killing it. So cheers.
By the way, it is exciting to already have news hubs coming out with stuff about this game. That is so cool.
Okay, let's just get stuck in here. So this entire blog post can be found over on the Kickstarter, and I will of course link you guys up down below if you prefer to read it for yourself, but we're going to get into it here. So the post is titled Update 19, The Evolution of the Hedgehog. There was perhaps no unit more loved and hated in our last Stormgate playtest than the Hedgehog, affectionately referred to as Cars by our ultra-efficient playtesters. The Hedgehog is the first Vanguard unit produced by the Mech Bay and often formed the core of any Vanguard army composition. It moved fast, really fast, and fires a barrage of missiles one at a time. Timing your reloads to execute hit and run tactics can make them scarily effective and fun to use. Enemies can see when you've expended your payload, adding to the potential for counterplay. Some players felt that they were too easy to use and thus too difficult to counter, and we're planning to make some changes, and we'll keep a close eye on them in our next playtest.
Okay, in their next playtest. So, yeah, in my experience, they were strong units. I don't know if they're overpowered. I always find it kind of funny when people react this early to any news out of a game, because I feel like it does take time to kind of get a handle on where each unit is at. But it did seem like there was a pattern where people would tech, whether it was fast expand or just one base, into, are they mech bays? Or yeah, it's produced at the mech bay, excuse me. It says it on screen here. I almost called it a factory. They would tech into 2 mech bays and literally sell off the barracks just to keep the extra resources to then proliferate a lot of hedgehogs here and basically do like a control play where if you tried to get out of your base, they would kite you and do damage. And it looked pretty strong. So I'm interested in what these changes are going to be.
So let me just say, that is 100% correct. The Hedgehog unit looked both incredibly fun to use.
So this is the Hedgehog unit right here, this little purple car.
But extremely frustrating to play against. I remember seeing some games from streamers playing as the Infernals, and most of the Vanguard players they came up against were trying their best to rush out these units from an early mech bay, and they seem pretty unstoppable. So, you know, if you think Hellions are annoying to play against from StarCraft, these things are just on another level. So I'm very interested to see what changes with them in the next beta test. So they continue here, we've only had a placeholder Hedgehog model in the game so far, and it's undergoing rapid iteration.
This is actually one of the funny things. This was one of the, it was like one of the key units that was also just a placeholder model. So kind of a funny look for the gameplay itself. If you look at it, for instance, a lot of the Infernal units, they looked much more polished.
So we thought we would share what inspired the design of the unit and give you a glimpse into our visual design process. You'll see it in its more complete near-final form in the upcoming February playtest, codenamed Elephant. So there you have it, the next playtest kicks off in February.
It's kind of a funny name for the playtest, Elephant. I wonder where that comes from.
I don't yet know the exact date, but I believe that the Kickstarter lasts until the end of January, which means if all of those Deluxe Founder Edition backers are due to gain access, that would tie in nicely there. So who knows, maybe it'll even be in the first half of February. You may wonder what they're talking about with the elephant there. So each of the beta or alpha phases has a code name. I believe the last one was called Devastator, and it seems the next beta test is, funnily enough, called Elephant. So here are some of the very early original concepts for the Hedgehog.
This is so interesting. So it could have kind of come out as any of these units here.
Interesting to see how it goes from being like a wheeled vehicle to this quadruped walking mech. In fact, it ends up looking a lot like the Atlas unit, which is likely why they stayed away from that particular concept. Or, you know, maybe, perhaps the Atlas concept even came directly from here and it was sort of inspired. Here's another early grey box version. They have changed the wheels to be multi-directional so that the Hedgehog can spin around on its axis and allow for far greater lateral mobility. They continue on here saying, we dropped a placeholder model for the Hedgehog into our early playtests so that we could get the feel of the unit to a good place, and many of our playtesters said that they wanted us to keep it. So maybe it'll come back as a retro skin sometime in the future. So that would be really cool actually. I kind of like the little car model. It sort of reminds me of like Hot Wheels or something like that. I don't know, call me crazy, but I wouldn't mind some sort of a retro skin for it. Here you can see the concept continue to evolve over time. Eventually they settled on this design here with the rounded launcher on top.
That's interesting. Look at number 3. That really looks like a vulture, by the way. And 3 and 5, actually.
Legs that sort of split apart as it enters its anti-air mode, kind of looks a little spider-ish. So the Hedgehog can actually hit both ground and air targets in its regular default mode, but there is also an upgrade available for it that allows it to deploy into an anti-air mode, becoming a temporary stationary AA turret. And here is the finished model. This is what you're going to see in-game, and this is what it looks like when it enters into the AA mode. I think they've really nailed the readability of that animation, so if you see a Hedgehog spin like that, you know that it's entering an AA.
I like the spin animation. So he's talking about the anti-air mode. Basically, you can like turn the Hedgehog almost into like a turret, like a Terran turret or like a Goliath. But initially, the placeholder just, it looked like it was an unmarked soda can or something. It was like just a silver, tall like beer can or something like that with no markings on it. But now with the spin animation, it's going to be really identifiable. Very cool.
Mode. Or if it's already set up in that AA mode, you can tell because the launcher is pointing upwards. These are pretty small details, but they are very important for an RTS for readability. It looks like they've really nailed that here. So they finished the post saying, let us know what you think of the new Hedgehog after you get your hands on the closed beta test in February. Upon the conclusion of this Kickstarter campaign, which is at the end of January, founders who are receiving Wave 1 beta access as part of their pledge will be invited to the private closed beta Discord server where you can connect with other playtesters and share your feedback directly with the Frost Giant dev team. We look forward to seeing you there. Until next time, thank you so much for your support, the Frost Giant team. So I really like the transparency here. I find it pretty cool to get a sneak peek behind the scenes of just what they're working on in between the testing phases. Hopefully this iterative process we've just gone over here will help some people who were perhaps more critical of the game and the way that it looked to understand the design process that they're going for and just how fast things will change going from one test to another. I'm sure this new Hedgehog model will not be the only change going into this new testing phase. Now, I know there will probably be comments down below saying, well, you know, finished model or not, I simply don't like the way the game looks and the overall aesthetic. I would say that is probably the biggest criticism that I see about Stormgate, whether it's here on my channel or it's on Reddit or it's on other people's YouTube videos. That's the biggest criticism. To those people, I would say, that's fair enough. If you don't like the look of the game, you know, I get it. It's not for everyone, but I would still urge you to try the game out whenever you're able to and see.
One of the things I find funny, when people complain about the aesthetic, I don't feel like it looks any worse than any of the other RTS games we're already playing. StarCraft 2, Warcraft 3, StarCraft Remastered, Age of Empires 4. I feel like it looks very clean and colorful. I feel like a lot of the complaints for the game come from StarCraft fans that were kind of used to the dark, I guess, Aliens versus Predator. Maybe Warhammer 40K is a better example, but that style. But honestly, I feel like color-wise, I think it's very good. And I think some of the stuff that people complain about, like it's not clear when fights happen, you know, who's winning, who's losing, or what's dead or what's alive, that's going to be fixed. So I don't know. I also just feel like as long as they get, you know, the coloring and the what is the word I'm looking for? So you can visually confirm what's happening. I think that, you know, you're going to get very used to just the strategies and what you're seeing happen in game anyways.
What you think then? I say this as somebody who looked at both Stormgate and Zero Space initially, and I wasn't blown away by the art direction either. I didn't hate it by any means, but I also wasn't being wowed out of my chair. But having now played both games and tested them thoroughly, it has actually really changed my perception on the overall package, and I've actually grown to appreciate the art style of both games. So that would be my advice to you. Give the games a try. At least with Stormgate, it's going to be free to play, so you're not going to lose anything by doing that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you're interested in more Stormgate content, check out this Q&A with Frost Giant CEO Tim Morton about the possibility of a fourth faction. Very interesting answers from him there.
Very cool stuff. Thank you so much for watching that little update there with what's happening with Stormgate. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next iteration of the game and seeing what exactly they're going to be putting in as far as like tier 3 units, what kind of changes they're going to make to improve the visual clarity. And I don't know, general balance stuff, things like that, as we kind of get the meta to begin to form and get a better idea of what's going to be happening there. Thank you for watching. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the changes with the Hedgehog or whatever else your thoughts are with Stormgate. And like the video, subscribe, and go to tastelessthreads.com. The shirt I've got on, Gosu shirt. We got a whole bunch of other shirts on the website. I'm sure you'll find something you like there. Please check that out. Have a good day, and I hope to see you again in a future video. Bye-bye.